Can you believe it? We are approximately 3 weeks away from the release of Elden Ring. Hello everyone, for anyone new, my name is Ghost Riposte. Well, not really, but I named the channel that anyways. Cheesiness aside, I have cleared my schedule for Elden Ring and will 100% be playing and streaming as much as humanly possible for about 10 straight days. I can't wait to play and enjoy the new journey with everyone. For this weekend, I'm not necessarily set up to stream PC games, but I would love to stream the new Bloodborne demake right here on YouTube, so I'm trying my best to set that up for this weekend. Keep an eye out for that. Also, I may do one last video before Elden Ring, which won't be a rankings video, more of a tribute / hype video on the series in general, hopefully to work on my editing skills and get pumped for the 25th. On to today's video. Having previously counted down the Bloodborne and Demon Souls areas, today we are moving on to Dark Souls, an absolute classic and masterpiece and one of my favorites in the series, although my favorite in the series seems to be whichever I most recently played. I left out Firelink Shrine as I'd like to save the hub worlds for a future video, as well as the Valley of Drakes, Quelaag's Domain, and the Great Hollow, simply because they're more passageways than full-scale areas. I hope you enjoy these rankings of Dark Souls 1 as we head on over to Lordran. Tomb of the Giants. Dark, disorienting, and filled with despair, the Tomb of the Giants exudes dread, nailing what the area is supposed to convey, especially when capped by Gravelord Nito, the first of the dead. Unfortunately, atmosphere is one ingredient that goes into constructing an area, and the lack of interesting enemy type and placement, along with visibility, even with lighting items equipped, don't provide an experience most players will enjoy. Granted, the contrast of the darkness and claustrophobia, met by the opening clearance upon breaching the outdoor turquoise sky with massive trees, is a sight to behold. We do have a brief event with our good buddy Patches that involves Rhea of Thorolund that is mildly entertaining, but not enough to lift the tomb from the bottom trenches of the list. Lost Izalith. Everyone's favorite pizza sauce level. Unfortunately, I was late to Dark Souls and my journey began with the remaster, so I can only imagine what the original 2011 lava looked like. Similar to Tomb of the Giants, I expect this area to look like a past land of destruction and ruin, but that again doesn't account for the enemy design and placement. As generally recognized, From Software had little time to finish the last stages of Dark Souls, which is acknowledged as the reason many later areas will fall towards the bottom half of this list. We do get to continue quests with Solaire and Sigmire, but outside of that, the gameplay is pretty lackluster due to the level's layout, enemy type, and placement, as well as perhaps the most hated boss in the entire series in the bed of bullshit. Demon Runes. I'm not a big fan of bosses showing up later in games as common mob enemies, as done here with the Taurus and Capra Demon. For me, this diminishes their importance and impact on the overall story. Yes, the area is the Demon Runes, but other types of demon enemies would have been nice to come across. I'm not sure whether to chalk this up to time crunch or not, as you can point to many examples where From Software has done this, including Crystal Sage and Shadow of Yharnam. In addition, the battlefield isn't interesting as it's pretty much a giant open space with some lava pools. To cap it off, the area is opened and closed by two of the weakest bosses in the game in Ceaseless Discharge and Demon Fire Sage. Catacombs. I have to admit, I was one of the players that found themselves trudging through the graveyard and down into the catacombs to begin my Dark Souls adventure. I had always heard of the vaunted difficulty of the Souls series, so I assumed I was on the right path. I somehow didn't even notice the pathway up towards Undead Berg, as ridiculous as that seems now. While there is a path to Pinwheel that can essentially bypass the entirety of the catacombs, new players will have to explore an intricate maze of skeleton varieties, necromancers, a Titanite demon, and even a Black Knight. I personally nominate the original Dark Souls skeleton wheels as the most irritating, rage-inducing enemy type in the entire series. You could find the Dark Moon Seance Ring to grant audience with Gwendolyn, the Gravelord Covenant, as well as Vamos to ascend your Chaos weapons. The catacombs are hit or miss depending on if you like intricate, mazy exploration or more straightforward combat. New Londo Runes. This haunted, flooded area is an absolute nightmare for first-time players as it contains intricate, difficult-to-navigate level design, a number of ghostly ganks, brutal dark raids, and one of the most difficult bosses in the game in 4 Kings, along with a pretty complicated runback if you aren't privy to the exact path. Opening the large fortress-like gate and draining the massive flooded area, seeing that it connects back around through the Valley of Drakes, is certainly a memorable moment and scene. New Londo was originally sealed away by Ingward amongst other sorcerers to lock in the Dark Wraiths and Kings after they descended into darkness, while unfortunately sacrificing the town as a whole. Completing the area will reward you with access to Darkstalker Kate as well as the Dark Wraith Covenant. This area is tough to place as it contains an eerie, haunting atmosphere with strong story implications, but many players are likely to find the area frustrating to navigate. Crystal Cave. Certainly one of the most unique areas in the entire game. Similar to Darkroot Garden and Basin, the contrast between this magical snowy passage and the dreary nature of Lordran works as a nice change of pace. The invisible pathways are an interesting challenge, as you can either make use of the prism stones or simply watch where the snow lands to make your way. A few difficult encounters with golden golems enhance the treachery of this journey. Once you are aware of the pathways, this area is actually quite short, but unique areas like this are what help add up to a game being memorable. Crystal Cave is capped by a decent but awkward fight with Seath the Scaleless. The Depths. You may think I'm crazy, but I don't find the Depths as bad as people make them out to be. Maybe it's just that in comparison to what's to come in Blight Town, they're not that bad. Although I have always loved the beautiful shot of the sunlight just peering through the cracks behind Gaping Dragon's arena. Admittedly, the enemy selection is quite weak, as other than an invasion from Kirk, Knight of Thorns, and a couple of butchers. We do get to free Laurentius, but then again, basilisks live down here, which can curse half your health away in Dark Souls 1. As well, much of the exploration simply leads around corners into dead ends, while not ever finding anything too exciting. Exploration around intricate hallways is fine, but if they don't really lead anywhere interesting or provide any reward, it's not likely going to make for enjoyable gameplay. I don't mind it, but probably not many players' favorite area. Duke's Archives. The idea of a grand library full of ancient knowledge always makes for an interesting location in a game like Dark Souls, probably part of the reason they reused it in Dark Souls 3. However, I've never liked the enemy placement and exploration here. I've always found the tight corridors to be inherently ganky and siphon you down specific paths. I realize it is a library, so it must be designed like this to some extent. I'm also not sure about the first Seath encounter, as I'm generally not a fan of scripted player deaths. I do recognize this is a way to transport you to a separate part of the library, but perhaps this could have been done in a different way. Apparently, the little octopus creatures are known as Pisaka and are the results of experiments run by Seath the Scaleless on citizens of Lordran. An area that definitely provides some different scenery and traversal, but is ultimately let down by mostly rehashed enemies. Chasm of the Abyss. While the Chasm is really the continuation of Ulasil Township, it's distinct enough that I gave it a unique entry. The area doesn't have a wide variety of enemies to battle, but the sheer amount of humanity floating throughout the Dark Cave, the looming lore of Artorius and Menace, and the rescuing of Sif make this quite a memorable area. The atmosphere is perfect, as it's always super creepy and terrifying to come down here, especially when the most difficult boss in the game awaits you. According to the Soul of Artorius, the legend that Artorius repelled the Abyss only told half of the story. It seems that he was defeated and his honor preserved by some unsung hero who is the true victor over the Abyss. Can we avenge Artorius with the help of the loyal Sith? Undead Asylum. The classic tutorial area, Undead Asylum, is a fantastic introduction to the game. It's not too little, not too much, just what it needs to be. The area introduces you to the game, you talk to Oscar, see some basic bitch enemies, it gives you some weapons, shows you an average boss, and sends you on your way. Just what it needs to be. You even have a return trip later to collect some extra goodies, most notably the Peculiar Doll, which grants access to the painted world of Aryamis, and a battle with an upgraded Asylum Demon, the Stray Demon, who drops a Titanite slab. This is actually the demon you see at the very beginning of the game, a hint for very astute players to possibly return here later. Fine for what a tutorial area should be. Royal Wood. Introduced through the stunning Ulasil Sanctuary, the Royal Wood is an interesting look into the past of Lordran. The sanctuary seems to line up with Sif's arena, Calamy, where the Hydra would be, and the woods in general are obviously Darkroot Garden and Basin, set 200 to 300 years in the past, as we later find out. It is interesting to see this area in a daytime setting, however, it is essentially the exact same area with minor enemy modifications and some snazzy elevator shortcuts. Curiously, the technology for these shortcuts doesn't seem to exist in current time, perhaps due to the collapse of Lordran. Interesting to think what other technologies may have existed before the war between Gwyn's army and the dragons. We get to meet the charming, marvelous Chester, but this area is really carried by the fact it contains two of the best bosses in the game in Calamite, and of course, the legendary Knight Artorius. Kiln of the First Flame, the iconic run-up to the ancient Burn Colosseum structure housing the first flame, sun fading through the clouds, weaving and fighting through the last of the Black Knights is magnificent. I was on the fence as to whether to include this as an area or not, but I thought I'd chuck it in here as a small mention at the very least. Brief but satisfying, you'll engage a hollow Gwyn just hanging on in an attempt to protect the fading first flame, accompanied by the unmistakable, brilliant piano track. Undead Berg. I love every new trip into Undead Berg as you storm the bygone castle gates, wondering where this adventure will take you. That is, after realizing the Catacombs ain't the way. In this entry, I'm discussing everything up through Taurus Demon, who other than YOLOing off the bridge is a satisfactory boss for this point in the game. This is an excellent introductory level in that you are introduced to very weak enemies, but ones that can kill you if you're too nonchalant, and these provide plenty of opportunity in different varieties to learn really most of the mechanics that you will need on your journey without explicitly telling you what to do. There are enemies with no shields and a dagger, enemies with a solid metal shield and spear, archers, enemies that come at you in ganks, 1-on-1, 2-on-1, really just a weak variety of almost every situation you will come across, even a lone Black Knight, which will likely be left for later on first runs. You even get a cool live shot of the Hellkite Drake. The layout of the level also provides the exploration and traversal that you should become accustomed with as you proceed. As I mentioned in my Demon's Souls area rankings video, I've always loved castles and knights, so I might have overrated this one a touch, but this is a fantastic first area. Ash Lake. Though there will always be some level of subjectivity, I try to make these lists as best as I can through the lens of game design. I have to be honest, I don't understand the fascination with Ash Lake, but I know many of you absolutely adore this area. The area just doesn't hit me in any sort of profound artistic storytelling way. I would assume the love comes from the mysterious, melodic, chanting soundtrack, the lovely turquoise sky with the massive trees, as well as the completion of Sigmayr's questline and obtaining the Path of the Dragon Covenant. I will say, I was stunned the first time I saw the Hydra fly over the sandbars from one side of the lake to the other. I can't say I care for the clam enemies, as their physical design makes their attack animation a little bit wonky. I can see why so many adore this area, it's just not an area that I necessarily can't wait to get to. Please don't kill me. Blight Town. There's really nowhere to rank this one to appease everyone. Some players would say this is something Ceaseless Discharge shat out, and others would say it's pretty fantastic level design. Blight Town will make or break a lot of first-time runs. Either you'll be stopped dead in your tracks or persevere and gain the confidence to go on and conquer Lordran. The entrance through the depths is especially a nightmare, as you'll have to deal with multiple ogres, but in very tight quarters, followed by a slew of infested ghouls, a toxic blow dart douchebag, and rickety pathways. If you even get past that, you'll hopefully follow the right path down a series of ladders to the first bonfire, where your journey has only just started as the nightmare ensues through a gang of the same, where you'll eventually be rewarded with a poison swamp, where hopefully you find the second bonfire. But wait, you're now stuck down here because you don't have the Lord Vessel yet. I suppose if you're going to have a Valley of Defilement, a gutter, a Blight Town, this is pretty close to the design you'd want. I don't know what makes it fun per se, but it makes sense for what it's supposed to be. As with most Souls games, persevering through all of this and defeating Quelaag, a really solid boss to ring the Bell of Awakening, is one of the most relieving, rewarding feelings in the game. Ulasil Township. As I said, I wasn't around for the prime of Dark Souls, so have never participated particularly heavily in the PvP. I mention this because I can't help but feel this area gets slightly overrated due to players having nostalgic memories of PvP at the top section just after Knight Artorius' fight. The aesthetic design of the buildings and layout of the level is solid, as well as really nicely placed shortcuts, but the entire area really only consists of one enemy type with slight varieties, and this ball and chain monster. Although for this list I'm making artificial cuts in where levels end, and you could really include Chasm of the Abyss, Saving Sif, and Manus all within one large run. You could technically even count Knight Artorius as part of Ulysseal Township, as his arena is the gateway to the area. I'm certainly not saying the level isn't good, nothing design-wise about it particularly blows me away. That being said, I know it's a classic and I'll account for the PvP memories that I never had, landing it with a solid ranking. Sens Fortress. The fortress of fun, torture, and controller throws, this diabolically designed death trap is one of the most difficult areas in the game. The player is forced to play methodically and cerebrally, where one hasty move can send you back to square one. Andre lets us in on what's to come by telling us Sens Fortress is an old proving grounds built by the ancient gods. It is the only route leading to Great Anor Londo. Of course, most fools can't even find their way into that fortified death trap. This fortress truly is a proving ground, as you'll have to summon all of your willpower, tools, and skill to make it through alive. Areas with platforming levels in Souls games always tend to divide opinion, but Sens Fortress is exactly what I would expect a fortress in Lordran to be like. A tar pit with Titanite demons, Sigmire needing a hand, hollowed NPCs, fun fact including Griggs of Vinheim, giants throwing boulders, serpents of different types, a number of traps of course including mimics, undead Prince Ricard, Logan, and this random merchant. While it can be quite frustrating, Sens Fortress is a nice examination of your strength and character just before reaching the Grand Anor Londo, capped by either you or Black Iron Darkus taking out the hulking figure of Iron Golem, who I love being able to see as you approach from the outside of the fog, like, what the hell is that thing? Darkroot Garden and Darkroot Basin. A vast, relaxing greenery-filled environment with hidden secrets, a wide variety of enemies, and one of the best bosses in the game, and our old pal Sif. I honestly don't understand why this area often gets ranked so lowly, as personally, it's one of my favorites in the game. I am including Darkroot Basin as the area directly links with Darkroot Garden, and the basin is essentially just a path to the Hydra, and later an entrance to the DLC. Depending on how you decide to interact with Alvina and the Forest Hunter Covenant, you'll have a variety of NPCs to fight or meet, including Shiva of the East, his ninja bodyguard, and a number of Forest Hunters, one of which drops the Black Bow of Ferris. I wasn't around for the heights of Dark Souls, but from what I can tell, Darkroot Garden is quite a fondly remembered PvP area as well. With a bit of exploration, you could even find the Wolf Ring and Enchanted Ember, as well as come across these guys, apparently known as Demonic Foliage or Ents, Frog Rays, Mushroom Children, Mushroom Parents, Stone Knights, Tree Lizards, and Great Felines, which are pretty creepy honestly. Granted, the Moonlight Butterfly blows, but this area has so much exploration, variety of enemy type, and atmosphere, it makes for an excellent section of Dark Souls, especially in contrast with the dreary nature of Lordran. Undead Parish. Essentially the continuation of Undead Berg, our delineation for this entry will basically be Taurus Demon to the Bell Gargoyles, a solid early boss. A highlight for many is the elevator shortcut that links all the way back down to Firelink Shrine, a pretty spectacular moment the first time if you were previously unaware of where the lift connected to. You'll find plenty in Undead Parish, including likely your first Firekeeper's soul, which I definitely didn't consume for humanity on my first run, the Warrior of Sunlight Covenant, the Hellkite Drake, Lautrec, and of course Andre of Astora. The Baldur Knights are a nice upgrade to the basic hollow enemies and quite fun to fight in the early game, especially when working on parrying. The Armored Boar is quite a sight to behold, and you'll also be introduced to a Titanite Demon. A very well designed natural progression from Undead Berg, except that bottom area with Capra Demon. That area blows. Painted World of Aryamis. For some reason, I've always pronounced this word Aryamis as if it's a French word or something, but I'm thinking it could just be Aryamis or Aryamis, I don't know. Either way, most players will miss this area entirely on a first playthrough, as making amazing areas entirely missable is classic From Software, but I guess that's part of the magic and exploration. One of my favorite areas aesthetically in the game, as I seem to always enjoy snow levels. I'm not entirely sure why, but snow levels are always fun, probably as they usually serve as unique areas in contrast to the rest of a game. Aryamis has a ton of great exploration as you travel this land, finding a really cool shout out to the Phalanx had you played Demon Souls first, although a more decrepit and hollow looking version. You can also get invaded by Xanthus King Jeremiah and his recognizable headdress and attire, and of course the classic,
"This land is peaceful, its inhabitants kind."
Seriously, the crow demons and engorged zombies make for very unique enemies in the context of Dark Souls. The layout is fantastic with nooks and crannies and hidden passages all over the place, but not too overwhelming or monotonous. Also, there's this weird hollow dragon. Aryamis is the perfect example of an area that introduces many new enemies, but doesn't unnecessarily overstay its welcome, ending with a fan-favorite boss in Crossbreed Priscilla. Anor Londo. I would imagine most of you had the suspicion that the Grand Anor Londo would nab the top spot. The grand ornate city is a sight to behold and has so much to explore and conquer as you fight your way through painted guardians on tricky ledges, the legendary and vaunted twin Anor Londo archers, an army of silver knights, and cap it off with a duel for the ages with the wondrous iconic duo of Ornstein and Smo. You'll uncover many secrets in Anor Londo, from the entrance to Aryamis and Dark Sun Gwendolyn, down to Havel's armor set stowed away in chests. You'll even be able to exact revenge on Lautrec via an invasion event, although I'm not certain what happened there. I guess he just got stuck behind his buddy in the pool of fire. Not to mention, these massive royal sentinels are spectacular and satisfying to take down, given their grand size. I would be remiss not to mention Dark Anor Londo as well. Shall you kill the illusion of Guinevere as told by the Dark Moonblade Covenant ring? This will open you up to invasions and a couple of new NPC enemies. We'll also find the giant blacksmith who will help us create boss weapons. The freedom and exploration through this massive palace, the battles with the Silver Knights, the lore of this ancient castle of Gwyn, and one of the best bosses in the game land Anor Londo atop the Dark Souls area rankings. Thank you so much as always for sticking through to the end. I hope you enjoyed the Dark Souls area rankings. As I mentioned, I may do one more video before Elden Ring, but it won't be a regular rankings video. It will be a tribute/hype video to the series in general. Hopefully I'll see you in my Bloodborne demake stream. Feel free to drop in and say hello. Have a good weekend. Peace.
Farewell, good hunter. May you find your worth in the waking world.